Good morning. As most people on Earth are preparing for the new year next Wednesday, I want to speak to you about forgiving yourself and forgiving others, the root of every struggle in your life. To me, there's no other way to begin a new year unless you wipe the slate clean from last year and begin anew. And there's no better way to do that than by talking about forgiveness, how it happens, why you're stuck not wanting to forgive yourself or someone else in your life, and why the root of most of your problems are about not forgiving the past in general. Anything that's happened to you, anything that you've created or someone created for you in general, everything must be forgiven. Every day you have to start brand new as if there were no past. This is the key to creating power in your life. Hi, I'm Sebastian, an author of 12 books, a speaker on stress relief and spirituality. As I share with you here on my YouTube channel live, for people who are searching for healing from stress and anxiety, I'm also a trained clinical hypnotherapist working for over 30 years. I'm also a person wanting to develop a brand for my speaking engagements and books that personify the goal of my heart, which is my spiritual inclination, peace of mind and meditation, personal empowerment. I often hear these questions of people I've known for a while and people I just meet. How have you accomplished so much in just one lifetime? My answer to them is that I've been hard on myself my entire life, always wondering what the next thing is that I must accomplish. Hear that? Up to this point in my life, I've never decided to do something and then think, I'll do this halfway. I'm either all in or all out. When I began writing my first novel, writer friends talked about starting and stopping their projects, taking years to complete their first endeavor at writing anything, going back and forth and trying to make it perfect. Honestly, I never did anything like that. I decided I wanted to write a novel, got a couple books about writing, asked a few friends about it, took a course or two. Then I decided I'd write 10 pages a day until I finished. Sometimes I didn't get to 10 pages. Sometimes I got stuck on editing while I should have been writing. But mostly, I finished each book I wrote in 3 to 6 months. This is including the entire editing process. When I started to play the piano or sing, I didn't think, what if I'm not good? I played and practiced until I was good. When I became a hypnotherapist or a yoga teacher, I didn't want to just be anything normal. I wanted to develop my own style of yoga, my own style of hypnotherapy. My students called my yoga boga. When I opened my doors for hypnosis, I wanted to bring not just healing to the process, but spirituality. I didn't want to deny anything that I was authentically. I wanted to bring it all into the same place, changing what I thought may have looked like a magical process into something that was usable, doable for each individual person and brought power to their lives. I always looked for the things that made me special or made what I did special. Well, you say, that doesn't sound anything like forgiveness. But, oh my dear friends, it is. What I hear in my head when I don't accomplish something is far greater than any taskmaster whipping someone to get them to work. I have a relentless taskmaster in my head requiring of me my best 24/7. This was perhaps until 2 or 3 years ago. I'm still finishing things, but I'm not punishing myself if I don't. Interestingly enough, I'm getting the same amount of work done. I guess my work ethic didn't turn off, just the way I dealt with myself did. I brought forgiveness into the process. And by doing that, I took away the edge of having to get done. And when I took away that edge of having to get done, I brought more authenticity to the process. Because when you think about it, if you have to write 10 pages, you might not write the best 10 pages. But if you think about, I'll write the best that I can write today. And if it turns out to be 10 pages, fine. If it turns out to be 15, fine. If it turns out to be 1 and it's the best page, even more perfect. When I was beginning as a singer in New York City, I had these 2 teachers that were world famous. I mean, really world famous. They taught, everyone from Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Cher. I mean, really, really famous people. One was really nice, the guy, and one, the woman, whom I learned the most from, was quite literally just mean. She had me put my thumb under my jaw at what's called the hyoid muscle, this muscle under here that goes from the chin bone down to the larynx, and make sure it didn't move as I sang. My fault was, and she thought when she listened to me, was that I was engaging this muscle and it was stopping my pure sound from coming out. So she figured if she forced me to not use that muscle, at one point I would learn to sing organically. If one note came out with that muscle moving, she would make me start over. I think in that first 6 months of lessons, and they were very expensive lessons, like an entire day of pay expensive. I don't believe in those 6 months I ever made it through an entire song. The first day I sang for her, I sang a whole song. But after that, when she started teaching me, never sang an entire song. She was relentless and bitchy. Somehow that made me want to succeed even more. That attitude, coupled with my need to be perfect and please everyone, made for an environment of intense learning. She helped me become an excellent singer. After studying with her, I began to get farther in my career than I had ever before. I recorded my first album, all because of her. So what do you think that made me do when I first started to teach voice? I've been in my life most of the time. Every time I learn something, I end up teaching it. It's just, I believe that there's really no difference between the teacher and the student. I think there's a symbiotic sense there. And when you understand that symbiosis, everything that you learn with the intention to teach somebody else. So what do you think that made me do when I first started to teach voice? It made me be mean and unrelenting. I made almost every person, especially the women, cry almost every time they took a lesson. If any of my students, old students, are listening to this, they probably are thinking, you absolutely did. Always I thought to myself, I bet she's going to learn something amazing after this. In fact, I remember one of those students is on Facebook, and I see her all the time, and she ended up becoming a really famous voice teacher in Los Angeles. I don't know if it was because of my my unrelenting criticisms of the things that she did and wouldn't let her do anything that was wrong, or that she found something organic after what was wrong was taken away. I suppose it was a combination of both. I realized that after about 10 years of teaching voice like that I needed to learn a new approach, especially when I started teaching yoga. Helping people shouldn't involve being brutal. Brutal honesty for sure, but not meanness. And there's a big difference in that. Like, I can listen to somebody now and think, okay, this is what you're doing wrong. This is the issue that needs to be fixed, perhaps would even be a better way of saying that. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. That's not quite right. Let's try it again. That's a way different approach than, nope, do it again. You feel the difference in the authenticity and the truth and the love inside of everything that's creative, everything that's truly good in this world is created from love. It's not created from a sense of force. I had to go inside and ask myself, why do I believe that all learning has to be hard? Then I began to think of the times my father tried. And I say tried because he rarely ever got through a session of trying to teach me anything with him without him being frustrated and dismissing me. I never learned anything from my father. I don't remember anything specifically except perhaps his bad habits and his bad behavior toward me. Those things I learned by intuition. Now, at the time this was happening, I was getting straight A's in school. Always. I couldn't and wouldn't get a B. Still, my father found it impossible to teach me. So what do you think this young child felt? Of course, like nothing he did was ever going to be good enough to please Dad. But way long after my dad died of cancer 20 years ago, his voice still played in my head. However, it was no longer his voice. It became my voice. I would have to say my own voice took over for my dad much longer than 20 years ago. I heard his voice of perfection in my head from the time I was perhaps 6 or 7 till even sometimes today. So how does this affect an adult life and adult relationships? Let's say one of the people in a marriage or in a relationship has trouble forgiving. The partner says he or she forgives, but deep down inside, the other partner knows the next time they have a disagreement, the same examples of wrong behavior will be brought up ad infinitum. So how do you deal with unforgiveness in relationship and in the most important relationship in your life, to yourself? Let me tell you a personal story about this. I'm sure you are well aware by now that every morning I have a spiritual ritual. I get up before the sun comes up, 99% of the time, read spiritual books or books about psychology, about understanding the self-empowerment. Then I read a spiritual daily reading in Spanish because I'm studying Spanish and I want to be perfect and bilingual, right? That's a must. Then I go to the mirror and tell Sebastian, this human being, that I love him. And I do that 10 times in different ways. Like, I love your truth. I love how you're trying to be the best person today, Bo. I love you, Bo. I love the way you're talking to yourself now, the way you're trying to teach other people. Then I brush my teeth with the opposite of my dominant hand, which is my left hand. After that, I go on a walk or a run for about 2 miles around a golf course at my house. This walk is where I get the most information about life, where I get a download of sorts of information from the highest source of being. It's where I separate my human self from the process and connect with divinity. This is when I find the gratitude I need to sustain my life, the power to discover my own faults, to feel embraced by nature and God, and basically to get the inspiration about how I'm going to spend that particular day. A few weeks ago, as I was asking God to soften the ground of my being, now, my being is not what you would imagine my being, my body. My being is everything that I am, both mentally and physically. Then after I ask to soften the ground of that being, I asked to carve out more of my negative traits and ego, to give God more space to use me for the will of Spirit. Then I discovered something really amazing. I discovered that I didn't know how to forgive myself. Perhaps some, but not completely. Yes, I've been teaching this to clients for years, forgiveness and forgiveness of self. But I was still holding on forgiveness for myself from my childhood and all the way through my life now. If I told you what I couldn't forgive myself for, you'd probably laugh. Most people just live with these kinds of thoughts and never think a thing about it. But no, not me. I would beat myself up every time I had a negative thought. Like I was a bad boy for dancing with any possibility of negativity in my life. I'm talking anything negative. Lust, thoughts of lack, thoughts of being unproductive, thoughts of not accomplishing, thoughts of not being the best person every day I could be. Basically, the same mind that took the time to dream up these fantasies would condemn them. See, I believe when we're talking about the ground of your being, we're talking about the polarity of the best of the best and the worst of the worst. This ground of our being, the matter which makes up all substance on earth. The good and the bad is made of this same subjective, subconscious stuff. If you haven't listened to my talk on Sunday, December 15th, I share a psychological theory called relational frame theory. Basically, if you acquaint God as the creator in your brain, but also have been told he's going to judge you and you're going to go to hell if you're bad, then you may go your entire life bonded or fused to that kind of thinking, even when you know with certainty something different. And my friends, that's exactly what my time with God had revealed on that particular day about unforgiveness. Or let's just say, forgiveness. I was still bonded to an unforgiving God, one who was exactly like what my ideas about my father were. On top of that, my thinking about it was compartmentalized. When I thought about what I wasn't doing because of unforgiveness, I would get stuck there thinking about it ad infinitum, asking the question, why? Why do I keep thinking negative thoughts? Why do I keep destroying what I'm creating? Why do I keep imagining something amazing and then finding a way to not do it, or not do it to its fullest extent. My friends, there's no answer to the question why. The question why is the biggest, and I mean hugest, reason for anxiety and stress ever. If you go back to any of my videos about stress and anxiety, you'll always find that at the root of that is the question why, because it brings in the inductive mind. It allows us to think, if, why he didn't leave me, why did I eat that pumpkin pie? If I hadn't done this, maybe he wouldn't have. See, why did he leave me leads to an if question. If I had done this, maybe he wouldn't have left me. Why did I eat that entire pumpkin pie? Well, if I had eaten some protein before I left for that dinner, maybe I wouldn't have been so hungry. If. Why did I go back to her after she hurt me? If I would have been a better person, or if I had thought more of myself, I wouldn't have done that. Why did I invest money in something I wasn't sure about? Do you see the relationship between why and if? If always leads to an inductive thought. The reason for why is a tunnel of multiple choice answers that lead to even a deeper tunnel of inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is an if statement, basically. It's based on truth, usually in real life, like if 1 + 1 = 2, then 2 + 2 = 4. But with emotions and in practical life, that results in emotional outfall. Inductive reasoning would be better left out of that part of your mind. We would be better off stating what happened and saying to ourselves, I'm forgiven. And whoever else is involved is forgiven too, and then move on. If you can't answer the question, what would love do? And love is always forgiveness. Then you're not doing what you really need to be doing. You'll end up where I was a few weeks ago, carrying my father's perfectionism into my 60s, way long after he passed away. This sounds like a smart answer, but carrying out this process is harder than it sounds. Humans can be resolute about something in one moment and completely fall back into old habits the next day, the next hour, or even the next moment. I find myself sometimes I'll begin a prayer on my walk. Say, for instance, the Our Father, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, that thy kingdom come. I wonder what the kingdom is for me today. And the next thing you know, minutes later, I realized I never finished that prayer. That's the nature of the human brain. It's tangential, because it can take any two things. It can take a telephone and a salt shaker. And if you give yourself enough time, you can find a distinct connection between those two things. And because our human nature, and we're the only creature on earth that can do that, because we can create connections between so many things, this framework, this relational framework that we've created in our mind is exponential. So to get to peace, to get to the place where we want to be, where our power is, we must get out of that part of our brain and get to the place where pure potential exists in the mind, in the place where you're connected to spirit. Recently, a client gave me an Anthony Robbins workbook to see if my ideas would align with his, or if I might just enjoy it. The truth, I thought it was amazing. I did all the work in the book, as I always do. I never do anything halfway. had already been writing in a journal, like he suggests, so I just continued doing my work there and in the book. I was completely committed to the process. I had particular things I wanted to accomplish the next day, the next week, the next year, just like he says. Then Christmas came around at the same time. I just didn't feel like doing what I intended. Then the likely ending to the story of someone who is a perfectionist, I started to beat myself up about not doing what I intended to do. I didn't forgive myself. And where do you think that led me? I'll tell you where it led me. It led me to not doing my intentions at all. And in the subsequent mornings, I started to slack off even on my morning routine of reading and walking, which I absolutely love. It's the most important time of my day. However, not forgiving myself started to begin to bleed over into every aspect of my life. I started to not take my walk until a little bit later, not reading as much, not writing my thoughts, or not doing any of it. The next morning after that, I woke up and didn't even have any dedicated time to reading anything spiritual. I just sloughed it off and went on a walk half-heartedly. My talk with God was in fragments. I would start to pray or give thanks for my life, and I'd end up thinking about something else right in the middle of a prayer, like I was talking about before. I realized that my thoughts were fragmenting. My thinking mind was fragmenting. I had no control, or had given up control over my awakened thoughts, my conscious thinking. Not the thoughts that are not deliberate. The subconscious or the unconscious brain feeds us thoughts almost constantly. The brain, that's what it does. It thinks. And when you just listen to those thoughts, you're led into a tunnel of old beliefs or old thoughts or old thinking. The difference is the awakened or conscious part of our brain is what needs to stay in control the majority of the time. So, they were not intentional at all. I had no control, or I'd given up control over my awakened thoughts and let the subconscious or unconscious dreaming mind take over. And what of that part of that mind that is laced with fantasies, the past, the undone past, the unprojected future, and many, many relationships that happened in both my personal and work life. This subconscious, unconscious can take up your entire day. It has no end, because not only does it have the actual facts of your past, but it has that part of your mind that can project inductive ideas or relational framework onto any part of that subconscious material. You see how you can get stuck in your brain? And that stuckness ends up being stress and then anxiety, beating yourself up. But what if I did this? Or I said that when that happened, what if I had taken that opportunity when it presented itself, and then I began to fantasize again of the many ways life would have been different had I reacted a different way, perhaps forgiving myself. After about an hour, you realize once again the time you had allotted to doing the work you wanted to do accomplished. You wanted to get accomplished is now gone. You didn't prepare lunch, so you eat some fast food and you end up spending the rest of your free time watching television, where you don't have to think, where the television thinks for you. You see, even forgiveness can be an imposed thought. An idea you think, but you don't really feel. Nothing can be created in your life unless you think an intention and feel it authentically. Then you press the power into the subjective consciousness that will shape and form something that is tangible in your life. If you're doing what I was telling you I've been doing in your mind, you need to listen to what I'm about to say, because this part of your sleeping mind is keeping you in the same place and will keep you there for the rest of your life unless you make some changes. And the first thing you need to do is forgive the past. Forgive everyone who taught you to believe that your past, believe in your past, and to begin to use your awakened imagination to lead you forward in life. Ask yourself the question, quite honestly, many, many times in the day, what would love do? And imagine that love and forgiveness are the same thing. To step consciously forward, I remember as a writer of books, I would say to myself, if I just get one page written, that would be better than none. Then by the time I was finished, there would always be more than one page. Going to the gym was the same thing. Get yourself there, commit to one exercise, then make a deal with yourself. If you don't feel it, if you want to leave, simply leave. Do you see how forgiveness in here is starting to work authentically? You'll find that you almost always, and in my case, 99% of the time, I'd end up doing my entire routine or most of it. Stepping forward out of your dream state or your unconscious is the first step to forgiving yourself. You stay in the dream because you believe somehow that you deserve exactly what you have, or perhaps you don't believe you deserve your life. So you're sitting around ready to put the kibosh on your life so that it ruins, so it starts slipping away and you end up with what you believe, or you end up with what someone else in your life said you deserve. This is not what I want for you, and this is not what you want for yourself. This is not the way to be successful and feel good about yourself and your life. Trust me, when you start slipping, you have to take action. Here's what I want you to try. Set a goal, any goal. Imagine like a GPS system in your car that you tell your mind the place you want to end up. Then take any step forward. It doesn't matter what you do, but do something. Remember, a GPS system will always recognize if you're going in the wrong direction and lead you back on track, right? So isn't a pure intention from your heart kind of like that GPS system? It's not only you doing it, but consciousness, which is pure God, pure spirit, that's directing you. So you can't go wrong if you continue to move forward. Once you start on your path towards your goal, set another smaller goal while you wait for the next direction. Because a GPS generally doesn't say anything during a 10 or 20 mile straightaway. Think about that. Think about how simply living a value-based life would be in those 10 to 20 miles. I say value-based because only you know what you need to do and say during each day to feel as if you're in line with your individual values. So to break this down, it's like you start with putting the destination in your GPS, and it starts telling you where to move. That's your intuition. You get this powerful intuitive thought, okay, turn left. Then you go a long while on that straightaway, and you might not feel another thing that intuitively for a while. What do you do then? You don't want to put the kibosh on your direction in that moment. That's the time to live your value-based life. Just live. Don't try to do anything. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to make the next move without God, without that GPS. So while you're waiting for the next move, be simple. Just go to work, eat, talk with your friends and family with a value-based intent. Then make sure that when you get the next instruction, you do it. You listen to it. Because you know what it feels like to have an intuitive leading. Most of us have fallen in love with somebody or gotten the job that we really wanted or knew we were supposed to be somewhere in a particular time or moment. We felt that feeling of intuition. That was our connection to spirit. That exists in each of us. We're just not so used to listening to it. Make sure that when you get your next instruction, you listen to it. And if you need to send an email, don't wait to do it. Send it right when you get the unction. If you were in the car and the GPS said, turn right at the next traffic light, and you said to yourself, I'll wait a few more minutes to do that or do it tomorrow, you would never get to your destination. You would be so far away from your goal, you may have to spend hours retracing the steps your laziness caused. When you hear what you need to do next, do it. Then while you're waiting for the next turn toward your goal, live your value-based life, forgiving yourself, trusting that the spirit within you, that the power that made you is also going to direct you. This GPS metaphor is the key to getting towards your goals today, any day. And if your goal is to be set free with forgiveness and love, don't stop toward that goal until you feel completely free. Remember to ask yourself the question so many times during the day, so many times between the times of your turns from that GPS. What would love do? And do it. Be blessed. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful week. I really, really, really care about you, and